Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Leanne. As Leanne was saying, I'm John Cardamone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. I just feel really privileged and honoured to be invited. It's never easy, I'm sure, to be the last speaker or to be the speaker before lunch. So hopefully I can connect with you. I think that's been a really big theme. I'd like to echo all the acknowledgements over the last couple of days too that have been absolutely amazing. And just like to acknowledge the Bunurong people, where I'm from in Victoria, Melbourne. Any of my crew here, there's a few from the department which I need to be on my best behaviour. But I live near a park called Churchill Park and Listerfield Park. And my family enjoy those parks, and yeah, just really grateful that that lots of people around that area can enjoy those amazing lands. So really appreciate that. Also really appreciate that I have an absolute honour to close this such an amazing event. It's like a boyhood dream running out on the MCG. Just to associate with some amazing people, well, all of the amazing people that I have. So thank you. So I'm an assistant principal back in Melbourne, in the deep, dark suburbs of Melbourne. I've been in the education sector for just over 10 years, started as a primary school teacher and worked my way up as a leading teacher in social emotional learning, and then got the privilege of being an assistant principal. And my portfolio is wellbeing, which is an absolute big passion of mine because I love children and have a really big commitment. And hopefully I can kind of incorporate all of the things that we've heard over the last couple of days. So, where it all began, thank you. That's my mum, my amazing mum, and as I shared yesterday, some people, I wasn't going to say it, but absolutely a mummy's boy still, but for good reason, which I'll certainly get into. Born and bred in Melbourne, which I'm very passionate about Melbourne, and I've spoken to Daryl about having one more Royal Commission about how bad the coffee is here. But I find it amazing that the coffee in Melbourne, I'm not sure how different it can be from state to state, but that's for another day. But can I just quickly say on a serious note, I've been here a few times and I've had the best coffee in Queensland at, where am I staying? Milcombe? I don't know. But anyway, very good coffee there. I grew up in a traditional Italian family, 2 brothers and 1 sister. And my dad came over in his early teenage years, and although my mum was born in this country, she grew up not understanding the language, would go to school with no school clothes. She just had any clothes that they had, lots of holes, no lunch, and all those sort of things. So really privileged that I've got a foundation of family that provided a life that was better for me and the rest of my family. So my early influences, my older brother, I was joined at his hip. I would just follow him. He's 5 years older than me, and I don't like basketball, but he loved basketball, so I started collecting basketball cards just like him. I could imagine it was very annoying, but he took me under his wing and had a really great relationship as we were growing up. My dad, very old school Italian. I do have flashbacks of us being in the garage, and he would have this old school pillow that was hard as a rock, and he just wanted me to be tough and strong, and so I used to be punching that pillow for it felt like hours. But that was his mentality, that you fall down, you keep getting up, you don't talk about how you feel, and that was his understanding at the time. And my mum certainly had an attachment, and we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of attachment theory and the impacts that can have. And early beliefs and values. So I kind of touched on, my dad, teaching me to be strong, that boxing kind of thing. I played Aussie rules from a young age, and I remember him, he didn't care how I played. All he cared about was if I tackled and tackled hard, and it was just, again, just really old school in that way. I developed a strong love of sport from an early age, and I started to develop, I was very protective of people that I loved, and I now that I look back, very protective, and I'm very protective now. And I spoke about a parenting style that led to a secure attachment, and I'll go into a little bit about how that's impacted me, but I certainly believe that parenting style and that secure attachment has been part of my healing, again, which I'll speak about. So that's the little fella there, a childhood of friendship and connection. I'll be speaking a lot about connection and a sense of belonging, and I'm so happy to hear that that's a lot of people's healing. And my theme is I wouldn't be here today without connection and a sense of belonging. So as a child, I loved connecting with others. It was hard for me to be quiet. I used to love to laugh and make people laugh, and kind of being that cheeky little boy. I made friends easily, and looking back, I love to have a sense of belonging. And I'm really going to talk about the importance in terms of what that looks like when it comes to healing. As I said, I was very protective, and I grew up loving wrestling. So any Hulkamaniacs here? Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Legion of Doom. I was just like, I just absolutely loved it. And I remember I used to teach my friends some wrestling moves in the headlock if they ever got into trouble. But I think it was an excuse just to do some wrestling moves and that sort of thing. But just remember, again, being really protective of my friends. I just quickly want to talk about acceptance and a sense of belonging, and I find that there is a difference. I work in a school, and sometimes you're forced to be accepted. Your friends might not like you or not getting along with the teacher and that sort of thing. And I think we say sense of belonging like just roll off the tongue, but if you think about the sense, having that sense, money can't buy that. And again, I'm going to show a slide later, and hopefully it kind of shows you the power of having that sense of belonging, which I think hopefully I'll be able to articulate that a little bit later. I played many sports and was connected to a variety of different communities, and that comes back to a sense of belonging that when you look at healing, it's kind of like a wheel, and you want different avenues, so you have better odds, I guess, to have that healing. Again, I'll be able to go through that, but played footy, cricket and soccer, the best sport in the world, Aussie rules, and I'm sure a lot of the Queenslanders aren't happy that Brisbane won. Even, I'm sure you want your rugby to be number one. And I still don't understand why there's two sports that are the same, rugby league and rugby union. I'm sure they're different, but I always say, imagine the AFL made similar sports. It wouldn't make sense. But anyway, I'm learning about the scrums and everything else. I was happy-go-lucky child. Thriving through play. We know children thrive through play. I had a thirst to play, talk and be active, and I still do. I think I have undiagnosed ADHD because I think I was walking over with Daniel and he goes, geez, you're a fast walker. But I just like to keep moving and doing things. But I think that's working to my advantage. I love being around family and friends. I love being outside, and I still do to this day. I started to really love the outdoors at an early age. And family events ensured that I felt like I belonged. And I think Michael, he kind of hit it on the head that, and I'm going to show that I just came from a normal family. I was a happy-go-lucky kid, really connected, and I had a really big sense of belonging, not just with my immediate family, but also my extended family. So the security of family. I love family events such as parties and Christmases, and I still do to this day. And I have fond memories when my family used to get together at Nonna's house, and we used to run amok there with all the cousins, and I just have really fond memories of all that. Being together was something that made me feel safe and protected, and again, that will be a consistent theme as I speak today. But I'll just pose a rhetorical question. So, what do you notice about these two photos? I'll just give everyone 10 seconds to ponder. So these two photos, they're about a year to 2 years apart, but I was being sexually abused at this time. So I just wanted to really highlight that, being sexually abused, it doesn't discriminate. I was going to school, active, playing sports, had many friends, really connected with my family. And I just want to highlight sometimes, we think of different children that are being sexually abused, we might paint a picture. And I just really wanted to show that, as you can see the top right, I'm going to school and I, look happy. And I think I was happy. I just loved socialising. And but I'll go into a little bit, obviously, what has happened. So the turning point. So I had a stereotypically normal upbringing until my childhood and innocence were stolen. So my behaviours were changing and challenging. I was communicating my worst fears through behaviour, and I think some of the people have shared, that it can be certainly hard for children to disclose, and where all children are communicating. So there's always a communication through behaviour, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I started to withdraw, often triggered by something really minor, and had instances of hitting and throwing objects. Throwing objects at people, but it was certainly a cry for help. Meltdowns, tantrums, and aggressive behaviour were becoming a normal part of my life. So my parents were so worried about me that I was seeing a psychiatrist, I should say, for 2 years, and I still remember Dr. Barry in good old Dandenongs on Heatherton Road. So it's probably not the greatest spot, but he was pretty well known back then. And I tried to look him up, but I'm not sure if he's still around, because I remember him just being really old back then. And he had a big white beard. He was a very nice man. But, obviously he was an ultra professional, done a lot of practice, but I still wasn't able to disclose. So whether that was a connection, or I didn't feel like a sense of belonging, or whatever it was, So I think it's important to highlight that you don't have to be professional, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So I guess where and how it all started. So every Sunday I would go to my grandparents' house where my abuser lived. Hang on, if I can go back. Actually, no, that's okay. Turn. So this is where the abuse happened for 2 years. So although my perpetrator, my uncle, was grooming me and building trust, and I think Janice spoke about, as children, as people, we thrive on connection. We need connection. I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs was really well taught in the 80s and 90s. It's not really highlighted these days, but if you look at his foundation, it's all about having shelter, water, security, that love and that belonging. And, obviously he was a really smart person, smart guy, and he was able to utilise that against me, so to speak. But we must remember, which has been highlighted, that he's also was grooming my parents. For how long? Who knows? But I just have memories of him taking me fishing and yabbying. So again, I'm getting that attention, what all children deserve, and he was feeling a need for me. Even though I was getting that from I was getting that from everywhere. But I guess for me, I certainly thrived on that. But I keep asking myself, why wasn't I able to disclose my worst fears? It took me 2 years. What was holding me back? And I would love to go back and ask that little boy, what was holding me back? But whilst I wanted to say something, I just couldn't. And obviously, my abuser threatened acts of violence against my family and myself if I did disclose, and in particular with my mum, because he knew I had a great connection with my mum. So that was something that I do remember that was constant, and obviously being a child, and we know the brain doesn't develop until our 20s, he certainly acted on that. I was forced to watch pornographic material and engage in despicable acts. So this is all when 6 to 8, and this was having a huge impact on me. The sheer horror and terror that I felt as a young child week after week was unbearable, and it has certainly marked my life forever. And you think about the child's brain. I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but I am fascinated about the child's brain and the impact of what it can have in later on years. And I've asked a psychologist that I was seeing at the time about 5 years ago, and I said, sometimes I just get really anxious, for no reason. I said, what can you just unpack that? Because I'm very curious. I like to ask a lot of questions. And he said, when you're a child, and you've been in your brain's been in the flight, fight or freeze mode, flipping your lid, so to speak. That's what we teach kids. But if you're in that state a lot of the time in your childhood years, it's going to be really hard, to manage that as you get older. So that helps me just understand that there is a reason for it, but something that I do absolutely manage. I tried to disclose my worst fears. Every time I tried, I'd just suffocate with fear. I remember numerous times trying to communicate with my older brother when we used to always play at my nonna's house in the garage. And I actually do remember trying to say something, and I just wasn't able to. I'm not sure why. I mean, we know some of the obvious reasons, but I'd love to go back and just see what were some of the barriers for that. It's something that I can't answer, unfortunately. But I would always try and communicate through my behaviour. It was like I was paralysed and I couldn't speak, so I was using my behaviour as a communication tool. So unfortunately, no one at the time knew what the signs of abuse were in my family. So it's no one's fault. This happened in the late 80s, early 90s, and I think it might have been a lack of education or awareness. But there's lots of statistics to show that 1 in 5 adults don't know the signs of abuse, and that might be a little bit different from research to research, but that's a pretty horrific number. And I'm preaching to the converted, and a little bit would be common sense to notice, but I guess it's no one's fault, because if you don't know what you don't know, so it's up to us to continue, not just to bring awareness. I think we've got huge amounts of awareness, which is great, but it's bringing that education together. So I think that's really important, something that I wanted to highlight. So I would invent illnesses and other excuses to avoid going to my grandparents' house. At times I would make myself physically ill by vomiting. And so, my dad being old school, again, it's just his level of comprehension at the time was just, come on, get on with it. You've got to spend time with your grandparents. And that's, I guess, I remember my grandparents didn't drive. So my dad used to take my grandparents to do the weekly shopping, and then that's where the abuse happened. So you can just see how easy it is, and just to be mindful, because as I shared, 90% of sexual abuse cases are happening with a person known to the child, and this is why I'm really big on, I think I do mention it later, about stranger danger, and I really think we need to change our mindset that we need to be teaching about strange behaviours, because unfortunately, some of our family members are really dangerous, and that's hard. That's really hard to talk about for some of us, and that's why I'm really. We're all strangers here, and I'll guarantee 99.9, if not everyone, would act protectively. So it's really important that we educate our children that some strangers are some of the nice, kind-hearted people, and that would be able to help you. So I think that's a very important message. Again, I was communicating my behaviour desperately, wanting someone to read my thoughts. I kept repeating my behaviour, so important. So it's really important to respond to behaviour in a manner that helps children to express themselves safely. And what I mean by that is, yes, there are some, I work in education, there are some children that behave in a manner that they know what's happening. But a lot of the time, children are expressing, they're sending us a message, and if we are just not shaming them, but if we're just putting them down and saying, yep, off to your room or go to time out, it amazes me with that mindset that a child needs us, they need us the most at a time when they're dysregulated. So it's not a time to send them away. That's the time to connect. And with my own children, my own son, he's 6 years old. I thought the tantrums stopped, but no. I was going to ask one of the researchers when it does stop, but that's okay, because I'm teaching my son that the way I respond is really being calm. I think if I sent him to his room at a time when he needed me, I'm sending him a message that I can't deal with you right now, you're too much. And that's absolutely not the way to go. So I'm happy to show you what I do without moving. I was going to move, but it's just about less is more. So I'm not a scientist, but I've studied the brain, and if a child's not in the cortex mode, so to speak, talking's not going to do anything. So it's about less is more. Telling them in 2 or 3 words, I'm here to keep you safe, keep your distance. And I always test the boundaries with my son. Do you need any help? No, go away, Daddy. Right, not in the cortex, so just move back and just wait it out. I'm here. And are you ready to talk? Can I help you? Yes, Daddy. So just getting down to his level, connect with a hug, and it's just so beautiful. And then giving him the empowerment to debrief. Okay, what's happened? Let's find the core of the problem. I'm mindful of time, and I've got so much to get through. I could talk about that so much. I'm really passionate about that sort of stuff too. So, pushing the wrong button. I would shake with fear and act out, knowing what was waiting for me. I would worry all the time. This was having a huge impact at school. I remember having huge separation anxiety, hours. My mum would try and leave. And part of my role is helping parents now to separate. And, the old school theory of making it quick and fast, and I get that, but sometimes we need to connect and empower children to be able to make decisions on what that looks like. And sometimes we've had mums stay there for 2 hours. That's okay. They're at school. They're safe. They're in the environment, and then you work on that. But anyway, that's something else that I'd like to talk about another time. But so I suffered in silence. I suffered immensely in silence. So some of the challenges I've already spoken about: separation anxiety from my mum. I used to always worry. I would worry all the time about safety, separation, or any potential dangers. My hypervigilance went through the roof. I would always look behind me as I thought he was watching me. So Mum used to always say, used to be driving, or would always be looking back because I thought he would be trying to find another opportunity to abuse me. But I still have worry all the time with getting white hairs onto the side after you have kids, obviously. But I still look for that reassurance from my mum. And I do get called from my brothers and sisters the mummy boy, the golden child, which I'm actually really happy about that, because there's some good things that come out of it, but lots of lunches and dinners, which is great. But I do love my mum, and I'm going to speak a little bit about her. But huge fear of abandonment. I remember going through relationships through my 20s, and I used to have a really hard time with rejection. And I think it comes back to having a lack of control. And, my psychologist spoke about I had no control when I was being sexually abused. So a lot of linkages there. Lots of anxiety to this day that I'm able to manage through proactive and reactive strategies. I think reactive strategies is very important. Happy to go into that if anyone's got any questions about that. But we do speak about being proactive, but we also need to have reactive strategies, because sometimes anxiety will just come no matter what we're doing. So insecurity leading to a constant need for reassurance, which I've spoken about. Intrusive thoughts. My psychologist said that we all have intrusive thoughts, and I don't think we've spoken about that, but that can really have an impact on people with lots of different diagnoses, and that can bring in OCD and all those sort of things. But again, something that we manage. So it certainly is. I guess the theme is it's absolutely a life impacted by trauma. I've realised that this is lifelong. I've mentioned that I still need reassurance to this day, which is there's nothing wrong with that if you have a loving parent and family, which is really important. But I really want to talk about the power of being believed, and it's been a great theme, and I wasn't planning this actually, but it's been a theme of connection and a sense of belonging, and we've spoken about a lot about disclosure, and this is, so I'm getting emotional now. I wasn't planning to. I'm usually pretty good at this, but when I haven't seen my kids in a day and a half or so, and that really impacts me. And but I'm always with my kids, and my wife. I just absolutely adore them. But I truly believe my biggest healing factor was that when I disclosed, I was believed right away, unconditionally. My mum, that had no education, acted protectively right away. She didn't blink the wrong way. She didn't question me. She didn't make statements, or maybe it was just for fun or a joke or anything like that. She, in the moment, like my mum's 4 foot, old school Italian, but like a bulldozer. She's still working 2 or 3 jobs. She's crazy. But she just got into action. And I just remember it being in the laundry during the day. She's doing the household chores, and I remember being really anxious, and again, I was feeling that suffocation, and she could see something was wrong. And when I finally disclosed, and every time I talk to my mum about it, she cries, but I said, "You believe me, mummy, you believe me, mummy." I think I desperately just wanted to be believed because, we've spoken about the dangers of disclosing, because there'd be nothing worse if, I think, the trauma happens even more if you're not believed. I think we've heard that. It can be just as bad. But I just remember my mum being on the phone right away to the police. And again, we've heard a lot of not so good things about authorities, but I still have the pink teddy bear that a lady policeman gave me. And I still remember her. She had long blonde hair, black glasses. She was just an angel. She just treated me so amazingly. So, so there are some good. There's a lot of good work happening from individuals within the system. I'm not going to talk about the system. It's not my jam just yet, because I'm the new kid on the block, so to speak. But I'm really talking about the community level of individuals. So really important to know that there's lots of people working in the police, child protection, all of that in the department. Give a plug to in the Victoria, doing some great work. So really important, which I've shared. This led to early intervention and support. So right away, I was saying, I remember my GP just retired, or the family GP. So really well connected. I'll never forget. He was asking me questions which I won't say because it's pretty intimate, but you could imagine. But straight away went GP. I'm not sure how the referral system worked back then, but I remember seeing a psychologist straight away. So huge supports right away. I want to talk about this led to a ripple effect. This can be profound if the right steps are taken. And again, I'm preaching to the converted, but if it helps to hear it from someone with lived experience, I think that's really important. So hopefully the ripple effect, I can depict that in the picture. But early event intervention through all those professionals. This is vital to involve professionals as early as possible to restore and pave a way towards healing. But on top of that, we need to give power back to children, and part of that is having an attachment that I did with my mum, and I was involved in sporting groups, and just the sense of belonging went through the roof and just gave me, again, that sense of belonging. So important. Strong friendships. So I've still got all my mates since I was in prep, and again, you can't buy that, and that's just a product of your environment. And I'm so lucky my mum and my family were provided those conditions for me to thrive. Strong family bonds that I've certainly spoken about. And finding greater purpose and passion has been a game changer. So I just want to talk about this a little bit. So I found having a family, my own family, has opened the door for a greater purpose. It has given me a shield that I didn't know existed. So it has given me a purpose that is much greater than me, so much so I would lay down my life for my wife and my children. And I know most parents would, but that feeling that you have, that it's just unstoppable, and it's the best feeling ever. And I'm so grateful. I'll talk about my amazing wife in a moment. But my other great passion is doing this. So when you do find your greater passion, and anyone that's been through trauma or even if you haven't, you find your great passion, it's really hard to stop. And it is absolutely the best feeling being up here talking to you in a committed, passionate way. And hopefully my role is to make a connection with you to sell that point. Some of the broader challenges, I guess responding to disclosures, it's a huge issue, and I'm a really big advocate about how to respond to a disclosure. I'm a big advocate that all organisations, schools, banks, everyone needs training on how to respond to a disclosure, because I truly believe if my mum did not respond, and she had no manual, absolutely no manual, she just responded in you don't even have to be a good human, just a decent human that is willing to listen, and you don't have to investigate, you don't have to be a psychologist that's done research for 10 years, just need to be able to listen and be able to respond in an appropriate manner. And that is why I've developed my Be Calmer framework, and I think we develop lots of frameworks that are really can be complicated, but I wanted to develop something that's easy to follow, that anyone can follow and pick it up and be ready to go. So if anyone's curious about that, happy to talk to you about that, but really important. Could you imagine if we all responded in a way, the way my mum did? Would we have the same issues? Maybe, maybe not. Would it be an improvement? Absolutely it would be. And I think we've heard Amy's story, unfortunately, at the start of this conference, and that story absolutely would have been different. And she was certainly entitled, and it certainly makes me angry. But I feel really fortunate that I was believed, and all the authorities were great. Went through the court system, he was convicted, slap on the wrist, but at least something was done. Family and community attitudes to sexual abuse. I feel like sexual abuse is like suicide has been really a big thing, especially in schools, and I think we're a bit more open to talk about suicide and suicidal ideation, and that's a really big problem. But the attitude, it's hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about that. Some of our family members are doing these horrific acts, and I think the more we talk about it, the more we educate and bring awareness, I think that's going to really help with that particular challenge. So our preventative measures, we need to teach preventative measures to children, just like we teach reading and maths. So I work in a school, and the department, I'm not just saying it because they're watching me, but we're really lucky in this country that we value education. Every child has a right to education. It's really important that we're educated with reading and maths. But could you imagine that we're consistently teaching about the medical terms, the proper names of body parts? I'm consistently talking to my own kids about the proper names and what they need to do. It's just a simple 3-step thing that they need to do if they're feeling unsafe. Explain what does unsafe and what does safe feel like? What does it look like? We need to role model this. We need to have these conversations. And I think, I'm not sure who it was it Michael, about it's not that complex. A lot of this is complex, but a lot of it's really simple. And I don't mean to sound, I'm not sure what the word is. It's not an easy fix, but it is really simple. Have the conversation. It needs to be repeated and reinforced. It's not just a once-off. It's not just that, someone's come home and they've said, or someone's touched me on the back. It needs to be repeated. I do it every day. We have dinner, we talk about what would you do if someone touched you on the bottom. And my daughter will say, I'll say, stop. she's a 4-year-old and she's got a bit of attitude already. What would happen if they kept doing it? I would tell them to stop again. What happens if they keep doing it? I need to go to a safe place. What happens if they follow you? I need to tell mummy and daddy. What happens if they say they're going to hurt you or mummy and daddy? I'm still going to tell mummy and daddy. That's how she talks. So, she might, from a cognitive point of view, but it's just reinforcing and starting that foundation and in that embedding. And all children need to know a simple 3-step system. Every household is different. But I've still got a little bit to go, so I'm going to quickly rush through. Education, we've been through that. The community thinking around stranger... I've already spoken about community thinking around stranger danger instead of strange behaviours. I won't go into that a lot, but really important that we educate our children that, I take my son to the MCG. What's going to happen what happens if you get lost? And we talk about, okay, you've got to go find the man or the woman in the red jacket. Why, Daddy? Because they work there and they will be able to help you. Can I go and speak to anyone else? Yes, but then we speak about strange behaviours because my uncle was doing strange behaviours and I was taught that, I wasn't taught what strange behaviours look like. Would that have helped? Absolutely it would have. Family dynamics after a disclosure. I could talk about this for another 2 hours, but within my family though, the way my dad responded wasn't too kindly. I won't go into details about that, but even the challenges of that. Does anyone know my dad? Because I'm going to disclose it. I've had my dad's he's a good person, but we've had our challenges because it was taboo subject with him. He did not want a bar of it, and that's just his level of understanding, especially an Italian background. The family name's really important. My mum wasn't having any of it. Like I said, my dad was Mr. Victoria, big guy, but my mum was like just, I probably won't go into too much detail, but that led to a divorce. So it really impacted the whole family, and you could only imagine in an Italian family when the extended family knows, it can really have certainly impact. But just quickly, my dad wasn't validating me, so I brought it up with him last year. And I'm a pretty resilient person. It took me 6 months to get the courage. I spoke to him on the phone and it didn't go well. Things like, I've taught you to be tough. Why are you speaking about it? And I was angry, but... someone's lost series. And I just think back to the poor children that are not validated. I had to navigate that as an adult, and that was so hard, like really hard. Like I said, I'm pretty resilient. That really triggered me. That my dad he didn't validate me for a really long time. I hit it on the head though because I wasn't having any of it, and I wish I could go into more detail, but it's really important. Anyway, he's come around because I wasn't having any of it. Called me up, he was crying, goes, "I'm really sorry, I believed you," and now we're back on track. But that validation, thank you. That validation, is so important for children. Again, you do not have to be an expert to validate someone. But me being a father, pretty resilient person, I found that really challenging. So can you only imagine a child not being validated? So when you're responding to a disclosure, believe, validate, and acknowledge. If you don't take anything else away from my talk. The lack of understanding around how we respond to a disclosure can either start the healing process right away or may prolong it. So it's hard to hear a disclosure. But you can either prolong it or you can start it. So really important to educate yourself around that. My healing, Leanne, if I'm really going over time, please just... maybe 10, is that or no? Anyway, I'll try and go quick. My healing. All right, I'll try and really go quick now. Connection. This is my beautiful mum today. This was taken about 5 years ago. I've put on maybe 5 or 6 kilos actually. The dad bod has certainly kicked in, but that's all right. I'm trying to work on that. But attachment theory, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but look it up. I'm sure a lot of you, because everyone works in this area, most of us, but attachment theory. You look at Amy's story about having no attachment, and then a child having that attachment, that feeling of safety and protection. Again, that's a talk in itself. So I would absolutely look at the importance of attachment theory. It impacted me to feel safe and secure so that I could disclose my worst fears, even though it took me 2 years. Connection with friends and sporting groups that I've spoken about. Having multiple trusts that I can talk to, even to this day. So I love this photo. I've never really reflected on it until when I was putting it in, but have a look at that sense of belonging. It really makes me emotional because I was 16. I was playing my 150th game. We won the grand final. But it was quite a special day actually. But you cannot buy that. That sense of belonging is just you can't put a measure. How do you measure that in any data? So sense of belonging, been a huge part of my life. It's been a huge healer. Feeling and sensing that I was safe and protected was a huge protective factor for me. Having multiple places that I felt like I belonged. So today, probably got about 5 minutes, probably the most important part of my talk. But anyway, that's okay. Today, with love and support, I've adjusted really well and become stronger for it. I was able to complete multiple university degrees, held steady jobs, married the love of my life, and have 2 beautiful children. It doesn't mean that I'm fixed. Doesn't mean I'm any better, worse, or whatever. But it just means that we can do this. If you're in this room and you've been through trauma and you feel like you haven't acknowledged it or been through it, you can absolutely do it. I thought I'd move past that traumatic experience and it couldn't hurt me anymore, but an unexpected trigger plunged me back into those dark, negative emotions and thoughts. So 2 years ago, I had a major trigger that involved my son. It was uncontrollable and I didn't see this coming. I had a feeling I had a panic attack. I was talking to my sister on the phone, going through the past, and then I'd think back to times when my uncle was sexually abusing me. So when I'd plead with him to stop. These images are lasting in my mind. They are embedded. When my anxiety is present, I think about all the what ifs. What if that was my son? What if that was my son in an abusive cycle? I would think that my son was there instead of me. My son asking him to stop. My son being powerless that my uncle was doing these repulsive acts. So that was really hard. I didn't understand it. It absolutely caused me to a spiral, and it probably coincided with my dad not feeling validated. I didn't know what was happening. I started to have intrusive thoughts that my son was going through an abusive cycle. So talk about hypervigilance. I mean, we're going out. I'm still looking for all the dangers out there. But the message is here, trauma can come and bite us if it's not resolved. And that's just my personal experience. So I learned triggers can come and go at different stages of life without warning. My childhood trauma has taught me that effects are long-lasting. My experience have shaped me as a person, as a son, as a husband, and quite now, significantly, as a father. Post-trauma growth. I think this is really important. We haven't spoken about post-trauma growth because we all have a right to post-trauma growth. They're my beautiful family. So the life goals, they do change. Work's so important, but absolutely family. Be in the moment. Focusing on what matters most. Stronger relationships, personal growth. Understanding that our past does not need to dictate our future. That cannot put that into more truer words for anyone that is going through a bit of a hard time at the moment. Post-trauma growth, this was at Queensland actually. My daughter actually white lied. She was horrified on the Wild Wild West. When the gates open and she looked down and she's like, anyway. But yeah, so that was fun. Being vulnerable and open to support others. I think being vulnerable, it's a bit of, not tokenistic, but it's a bit of a tagline these days, but being transparent, open and vulnerable, it just helps me in my healing, and hopefully it's helping others. Resilience and persistence. Hope's very important. Finding purpose, which I've spoken about. Just quickly, I think this is really important. So post-trauma growth, that's my amazing sunny wife. And yes, I am batting above my average, but it's okay, I'll give her that. When I first told my wife, Christine, that I was being sexually abused as a child, I had flashbacks of when I disclosed to my mum all those years ago. But Christine didn't question me. She didn't make any of those silly lines such that was a long time ago. She just cried, hugged me, and told me she loved me no matter what. Being sexually abused as a child has damaging effects mentally, socially, physically, and can alter the pathway for someone. So what are the chances that a child that has been sexually abused is able to recover? How do you measure this? Well, I strongly believe there are multiple ways we can measure post-trauma growth. Finding a partner, and you don't need to, but if you do, if they love you unconditionally and they want to take the time and truly want to contribute to your healing, there's no measurement of how great a feeling this is. I strongly believe if it wasn't for my amazing wife, Christine, I would not be the man I am today, and more importantly, the daddy that I am. It's improved our relationship. I'll skip a little bit because I know we're right for time, but publicly, I just want to say that I love you, Christine, so much. I'm truly, truly grateful for her. So how you can take action. This is my son. He loves that costume. I think finding your own connection and sense of belonging. So role model this to other adults and children. I think it's really important. You can't be what you can't see. We know children are like sponges. Learn how to respond to a disclosure effectively. This is absolutely vital. So I had a few things, but I think I've covered that. Connect with the children in your life. Invest the time. Invest the time. Help children by building their resilience and persistence. And that's not by punching, which I think it helped maybe a little bit old school way of punching a pillow, but the foundation of resilience and persistence is connecting and giving children love because they feel safe to be able to take risks and all that. But again, that's another talk, but very important. Educate yourself and empower children and other adults. Give power back to children. If my daughter's having one of her attitude episodes, she slams the door, I always knock. Hey, I call her Beauty. I say, hey, Beauty, can I come in? No, Daddy. And I just respect that. Of course, as a parent, if I felt she was unsafe, but it's giving her that power that I'm respecting that. Just nearly finished. I believe that children spell love a different way, and I didn't Google this, I came up with this. It's another 4-letter word, T-I-M-E. They say time is money, however, I want to make a new line, time is love. It's a great privilege that we take time to spend with our children and build on our very important family values. Build on the great experiences they have and build memories that no amount of money can buy. These important memories create and build family connection. And I love this line. Remember, the greatest gift you can give to children is your time and attention. It's that I can't. I'll read it again. Remember, the greatest gift you can give to children and adults is your time and attention. A big thank you. I just want to say a big thank you. There is a fancy QR code, and hopefully it leads you to the right place. But I think I just wrote a few kind of quirky lines just quickly, Leanne. Sorry. I just want to get it right. Yes, but it's important because I feel like I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm not going away. I want a role model that, as a survivor, that we don't have to be angry or want revenge, and that's okay if we do, some of us, it's all context, but I'm certainly not, because we need to role model for survivors that anger is important, but if we don't utilise it in the right way, that can cause all sorts of havoc. I want a role model that our past does not have to dictate our future. Let's connect, let's collaborate, and let's make change. And I just want to I'm going to finish on this quote. People need their tribes just like bees need their hives. Thank you. Very true.